So we've got our falling crate that isn't actually falling. And the reason why this is happening is because our Box2D world, our simulation that is running in the background, doesn't actually know that it should be updating itself. It doesn't know that time is passing. Remember, it doesn't really come from the flashy world. The idea of a event listener is totally foreign to it. So what we need to do to get our falling crate to actually fall is to tell our Box2D world that time has passed. Tell it to simulate a certain amount of time passing every frame. And we can do that in the enter frame listener that we have set up. So let's get into doing that. The first thing I'm going to do, by the way, is I'm going to change my frame rate from 12 to 30. I don't know why 12 is the default. Nothing looks good at 12 frames a second. By the way, this will probably still look crappy on your machine because of the screen capture software I'm using. But trust me, on my screen, it's going to look great. The next thing we're going to do is get back to our Hello Box world. And we are going to add a call in our new frame event that will tell our Box2D world to basically simulate that some amount of time has passed. And we do that using this function called step. Now step takes two arguments. The first one is how much time has passed. Now since our movie is set to run at 30 frames a second, the amount of time that would pass would be 1/30th of a second. So we can do that. There you go, 1 divided by 30. By the way, this does mean that if for some reason my Flash movie starts playing slowly and starts running at fewer than 30 frames a second, it's going to kind of look like my physics world is slowing down a little bit. Chances are that's probably the behavior you want. And for some reason they actually recommend against trying to calculate your real frame rate every frame and putting that into this step function. So here I'm just going to set it to 1 divided by 30. Yes, I'm using a magic number. It's probably better if I made this a variable. I apologize. The next value we're going to pass is iterations. And according to the tooltip, it's the number of iterations to be used by the constraint solver. And here's what I think that means. And someone out there can correct me if I'm wrong. So let's say that after simulating a 30th of a second, we end up in a situation like this, where these two boxes are clearly colliding. What Box2D will do is say, okay, maybe based on their mass and their velocity, they should probably end up looking something like this after they're done colliding. Well, that might be great, but now these two boxes are colliding. And so Box2D will say, okay, well, they'll probably end up somewhere like this. And hey, what do you know, these two boxes are colliding, and let's kind of fix this, and let's kind of keep doing this, and basically go back and forth several times until we kind of end up with a happy medium. That several times is the parameter that we're passing. In other words, the value that we're going to pass for iterations is the number of times Box2D is going to kind of shift those boxes around to make sure it looks right. If we use a value that's too small, you will probably have cases where boxes or geometry is intersecting and it won't look right. If you use a value that's too large, things will probably look good, but it might take an awful lot of time calculating stuff per frame. So you want to kind of find a happy medium. And I believe the Box2D people recommend using 10 as sort of a nice number that's not too large, not too small. So we'll go with that. And that's actually all we need to do. We have now told our Box2D world every frame to simulate 1/30th of a second passing. I can save this and run it. And hey, what do you know? Let's go and look at our little falling crate. It starts off at the right place, and now we can see based on its Y value that it's actually falling down into the screen. Looks like around here it bounces off the floor because the Y value starts moving up a little bit, and because our box was at an angle, it's moving to the left. And we can watch it kind of bounce a couple of times until it finally settles. Now this might be really exciting to you and me, but that's because we're programmers and probably nerds and enjoy watching X and Y values of simulated crates. To most other people, this really isn't all that much fun yet, so it's time to finally add some graphics. And yes, we're going to do that in the next lesson.